So I've recently played some Left 4 Dead 2, and for my first video essay I thought it would be interesting to examine the level design of the game and how much this design contributes to immersive experiences. One thing needs to be cleared up before we start. When I talk about immersion, I mean a very specific type of experience. To me and lots of other scholars, immersion is an imaginative and emotional response to a gameplay experience. Immersion happens in your head, in your imagination. For example, many safe houses have messages written on walls left by other survivors. Chances are, if you read those, you will start thinking about the bigger game world that exists outside the small game space you have to navigate through. What happened to the people who wrote those messages? How many are still alive? I wonder where they went. This is immersion. Here are some more examples. Who in their right mind would organize a wedding ceremony out in the open at a time like this? Maybe the infection caught the people in this town by surprise. I wonder who put up this sign and how many other people came through here and read it. How did those church walls get destroyed? Perhaps a very strong infected, or maybe somebody accidentally blew up the wall with a bomb. If you are asking yourself questions like these while playing the game, you are immersed. You are also immersed when you identify with a character. You laugh at their jokes, you don't want them to die, and so on.
But in my haste, I forgot coal. So here's my proposition. If you go find me some coals at yonder food store, I'll clear the path to the mall for you.
Finally, something that makes sense to me. A man and his snacks.
You are immersed when the sound of a boss infected like the witch or tank makes your pulse go up. And you're immersed when you panic when surrounded by infected. The list goes on and on. In short, immersion means that you allow your imagination to engage with the game world, its characters, and all the actual or potential stories in it. Your imagination is working very hard to fill any gaps left by the game and to make sense of the whole thing. Now that that's cleared up, let's move on to the main dish. I wanted to find out how the level design in Left 4 Dead 2 helps facilitate immersive game experiences. There are three different elements of the level design that I want to focus on in this video. The first one is the post-apocalyptic theme. Left 4 Dead 2 is set in a post-apocalyptic version of the United States. People became infected, turned into zombies, and some survivors are apparently immune to this infection. The grand backstory is never explained in much detail, and not knowing much about this doesn't really matter anyway. What does matter is how the idea of post-apocalyptic United States is presented. And here, the level design of Left 4 Dead 2 does a fantastic job. The presented game world looks like the proper thing, a world in a state of chaos. You can tell that the places you visit in the game didn't used to be like this at first, but now there's destruction and debris everywhere, abandoned cars are parked in the middle of the roads, we frequently see fire, traces of blood on floors and walls, and of course the infected are everywhere. There are many tropes in the game that are typical for the post-apocalyptic genre. For example, the survivors move from safe house to safe house. There are gas stations, barricades, weapon stashes, and cadavers everywhere. And the survivors visit places like abandoned warehouses, abandoned farms, there's a church, and of course also a shopping mall. Many places also tell little post-apocalyptic stories. Here doctors try to contain the infection. We can still see the tents they set up and there are infected running around in hazard suits. In Louisiana we first come across this person and then find a crashed airplane nearby. Especially US players might also feel a special immersive connection seeing some of the places they know in real life represented in the game. All of this theming is meant to set the tone, to get the players in the right mood and to stimulate their imagination. Their minds will take over and fill the many gaps left by the game.
How many of these cars are you gonna shoot?
A number of special objects in the game also help fuel players' imagination and sense of immersion. For example, you want to avoid car alarms. You can imagine what will happen if they go off. Stationary machine guns present a risk-reward scenario. You can use this powerful machine to shoot infected in front of you, but you are completely blind as to what goes on behind you. This is the perfect recipe to get your imagination going, worrying about the infected hitting you in the back any second. Sometimes you come across large ammunition or weapon stashes where you can stock up. This helps flesh out the world. Obviously, other survivors have fought here against the infected before. Loot is semi-randomly distributed throughout the level, which forces the survivors to take detours and to pay attention to shelves and warehouses when really they should be watching out for infected. This further adds to the level of tension the players experience. And one last point, soon into the game players will realize that doors and some walls can break and that the infected can climb over practically any obstacles. This lets players know that they can never feel too safe, not even in a room with just one door and 4 walls. The third and final design element I want to talk about is the environment. Verticality often plays an important role in Left 4 Dead 2. In some places, like in this hotel, if you're not careful, a charger can charge you through a window into certain death. Survivors rarely get the luxury of being on a high vantage point, like here at the top of the church. Usually, they are being watched by specially infected from above, further associating verticality with danger and fueling players' imagination. Another environmental aspect is how levels frequently try to slow players down and put obstacles in their way. Such an obstacle may just be a specific surface like a swamp, flooding, or if you shoot a gas canister by accident, fire. The actual infected themselves can also act as an obstacle when they charge at you from the front, and by doing this, slow you down in your own forward movement. Timed events also force players to halt and hold their position for a while until a bridge is lowered or a helicopter arrives. In all of these situations, players always find themselves in extremely vulnerable situations. And this vulnerability fosters immersion. Players' imagination runs wild. They easily panic and react in highly emotional and irrational ways. Great! You can also make players feel more vulnerable by limiting visibility in the level. Left 4 Dead 2 exploits the limited first-person perspective by placing many obstacles in the world behind which infected can spawn. In a first-person perspective, players can only look around edges or over obstacles if they move their virtual bodies close enough, which is risky. Shrubbery, heavy rainfall and nighttime also help further reduce visibility in the level and force players to become more alert. In the campaign Hard Rain, for example, the ground becomes difficult to traverse due to flooding. At the same time, visibility is frequently reduced because of the raging storm. Players can be easily picked off the rooftops as well. They have little information about their surroundings and they are extremely vulnerable. The perfect recipe to get one's worst imagination going and for panicky, irrational actions. But it would be too frustrating if players lost orientation all the time. So, in order not to break players' immersion, the game also provides many orientation aids like landmarks such as the No Mercy Hospital, or well-lit objects or places that draw attention and sneakily guide players to the next safe house. Levels are also consistent. In Death Toll level 2 you can see this road, but it's closed off. In level 3 you get to see the same road but from the other side. Suddenly this feels like a real place. Internal consistencies are a great way to facilitate a sense of verisimilitude and immersion. So there you have it, 3 elements of the level design of Left 4 Dead 2 that support immersion. The post-apocalyptic theme, special objects such as stationary machine guns and cars with active alarms, and environmental obstacles. All help elicit immersive game experiences. In a future video, it would be interesting to talk about elements of the level design or situations in which the opposite effect occurs. Or we could also examine many other aspects of Left 4 Dead 2 like dynamic difficulty levels, dynamic music and dialogue, combat design that encourages risky close-up encounters, and much more, and how each of these elements help break or create immersion.